Hey everyone, my name is Camille, and today I am here to talk to you about the challenges and learnings from designing for a market completely different from your own. Why is this relevant to you? Well, most of today's top tech companies for UXers are growing on a global scale, which means that localization is becoming more and more important in order to break into markets with different needs and expectations from your own. Throughout the past year at Booking.com, I've been lucky enough to work on a product called Booking Local, which is Booking's attempt at creating a completely localized travel app for Indonesia. But one thing to remember is that we made this app in Amsterdam, which is 11,357 kilometers away from Indonesia. And we gathered a lot of learnings along the way, which I'm hoping to share with you today. So before we jump into the presentation, I'll quickly give you a bit of background on who I am and my journey around the globe. So for starters, I am American and I'm from Phoenix, Arizona. When I entered university, I ended up being lucky enough to study abroad in Brisbane, Australia, which is where Indonesia actually came onto my radar for the very first time. That's because Australians love Bali. It is like the top travel destination for Australians, and I only knew this because this is where all my colleagues were going on their honeymoons. So when I was studying abroad, this is also where I started my career as a UX designer. So immediately graduating university, I got a job at Booking.com, where I moved to Amsterdam, Netherlands, and have been there for the last 2.5 years. So working at Booking has been super cool because not only was I exposed to the European market, but also I got to learn about designing on a global scale. But the funny thing is that even though Booking.com is known for using A/B testing and small step experimentation to become the global entity that they are today, they're actually, the strongest in the European market. And they're known in places like Southeast Asia, for example, but they're really not the travel app of choice. So knowing this, the leadership team at Booking.com decided to create a track called the Next Billion Travelers. And if any of you recognize the name, Google people, it was inspired by the Next Billion Users initiative, so basically, if it's travelers or users, these initiatives target countries, emerging markets, that are catching up with the Western world in terms of technology, economy, and internet usage, meaning that they are a prime spot to be right now for any digital product. But unfortunately for Booking.com, the European market and who they had always designed for had a lot of different needs and expectations than what these emerging markets needed. And small step experimentation was no longer going to cut it. So this is where my product, Booking Local, comes in. So let me first start by answering the question, what is Booking Local? So Booking Local is like Booking.com. You use it to find and book hotels. But the difference is that Booking Local is for Indonesians only, and you can only book hotels in Indonesia. It's completely localized, and the entire site is in the native language, Bahasa Indonesia. You can't even switch to English. So I will say in my past year working strictly in Bahasa Indonesia, you would kind of guess that I would know more of the language by now, but I literally only know how to talk about booking hotels. So that's not. But secondly, on our operations side, we do take hotels from Booking.com, so we take the inventory from Booking.com, but also we actually have our entire own operations team on the ground in Jakarta who go and sign up hotels for our Booking Local platform and get lower prices, etc. We also have an autonomous marketing team there as well, who specifically only markets the Booking Local brand. So I first answered the question, what is Booking Local? But next, why Booking Local? I said Booking has the strongest hold in Europe and not Southeast Asia, but why? So to start off with, Booking.com is not localized for the Indonesian market. On a shallow level, the UI is nothing like what the users expect to see there, but we'll get into that later. But on a deeper level, the payment methods that are used in Indonesia actually aren't offered on Booking.com, and most of the users there don't use credit cards. So even if we somehow get bookers to enter through the funnel and they want to book a hotel, a lot of times they can't anyway. Secondly is actually the perception of Booking.com in Indonesia. Booking is seen as a luxury brand that is super expensive, and basically you go there if you want to travel to Europe or internationally. A lot of times what we found that people would do is they would take advantage of Booking's free cancellation policy. So they would actually book a hotel through Booking.com and then show the government, hey, I booked my hotel, like give me my visa, and then would end up like canceling the booking and booking with someone else once they ended up getting the visa that they needed. So I answered what is Booking Local, I answered why Booking Local, but the last question is why Indonesia? So, in a Year in Insights search report by Google, basically Indonesia was identified as the largest and fastest growing internet economy in Southeast Asia. And the number of people accessing internet in Indonesia has grown from 29% in 2013 to 56% in 2017. And daily internet usage among those with internet access has increased from 49% in 2013 to 79% in 2017. Okay, so these numbers are great, but what do they mean? So basically, everyone is shopping online. They are booking online, ordering online, buying tickets online, sharing their lives online, and everything in between. And this is why it's such a high demand market right now, because of the huge potential. But unfortunately for Booking.com, and my team specifically, we are a little bit behind, and we have some stiff competition in the market. Basically, a few local players have risen to the top, and with the number one player being Traveloka, who has spent the last 7 years engaged in a pricing war with the other local players and winning. How do you win a pricing war? Well, basically, you throw money at the customer in whatever way, shape, or form. So it could be giving them coupons, deals, discounts, or even just straight up giving them free travel, free room nights. So it's a really, really great time to be a consumer in Indonesia because everyone's throwing money at you, but it's not such a great time to be a company because the strategy is, oh, let's play the long game, let's lose money for a long time, and then hopefully we win the market share. So it's not the best trade-off, especially if your company is focused on making money immediately. So at this point, they knew this, and they were like, okay, let's create a team on the Next Billion Travelers track. Guys, your focus is to win Indonesia. And so that is the challenge that my product team of 6 people was given. We had to win this entire market that had these players that were already throwing money at the customer. So this is where we enter product phase 1. And it's super, super, super important to note that this all happened before we visited Indonesia for the first time. So all we had to go off of was the research documents that Booking.com had previously, and then we also had the head of our project, who had been to Indonesia like twice, give us kind of a brief and a list of assumptions for the customer that we were building for. So on the customer side, the first assumption was that, okay, so we know Indonesia has internet now, but it's actually still really slow. So we have to have the fastest loading site possible, meaning that we couldn't have any extra photos, any animations, videos, etc. The second assumption was that the use case we were given was the last minute booker. And we were told that this person wanted to book a hotel as fast as possible and they wanted the cheapest hotel possible. So it didn't matter, they didn't need to go through any extra steps, they didn't need to know all the facilities of a hotel, etc. This specific use case was targeted towards the businessmen in Jakarta. So basically, in the capital city, Jakarta, lots of people would travel from outside the city, and traffic is insane there. So it can take up to 3-4 hours to get to work. So a lot of times, when you wanted to go home at the end of the day, you'd be like, okay, I'm not gonna drive for 3 hours, I just want a hotel for the night, I just need a bed to sleep in, maybe some air conditioning, and that's it. So that's who we were building for. On the hotel owner side, the first assumption was that budget hotel owners don't know how to use a booking management system, and a lot of these guys were still using pen and paper. And the second assumption was that if they were using a booking management system, then they were using like much older mobile phones to manage their hotels. And so that was something I had to consider in the design. So in summary, on the guest side, the hypothesis that we had was that last minute budget bookers want to go through the book process as fast as possible with low data and internet usage and on mobile only. And on the hotel owner side, our hypothesis was that budget property owners want the simplest mobile experience possible for managing hotel bookings, inventory, and listing. So this is where our first reality check came in. With these hypotheses and our limited knowledge, we built the very first versions of these apps, which you had just seen in the previous slides, and we hopped on a 14-hour flight to Jakarta, Indonesia, where we were going to meet the team there, learn a bit more about the market, and user test the first version of our product. So one very important thing to note at this point is that we did hire a team in Jakarta, Indonesia, but we had never spoken to them before. So our product manager, in an effort to reduce scope creep, which I'm sure all of you have heard, completely limited communications between our team and the team in Jakarta, Indonesia, because he wanted us to stay focused. So this was our very first time meeting them, we had never talked to them before, etc. So anyway, we hop off the 14-hour flight to Jakarta. I'm exhausted. Indonesia is the hottest, most humid, tropical environment I have ever been in. And as an American, I was shocked to find out that most buildings had no air conditioning. So I was suffering, but regardless of this, I was super excited to meet the local team for the first time. So we immediately drop our bags off at the hotel and we go to meet the local team. So I walk in and I look around the office, and the very first thing I see is a whiteboard. And on the whiteboard is written, "This design sucks." And I was shook. Like, I actually didn't think they were talking about what I put together. Like, I genuinely didn't. I was like, obviously they're talking about someone else. Like, and I was like, but I was given this brief. I was given this user, and I designed for the assumptions that I was given. But the thing is that the assumptions that I was given were completely incorrect. So actually, because of our limited communication, this team had been giving feedback the whole time, actually. So the locals had been giving feedback, and my product manager just never gave it to me. So they actually wanted to fight me. Like, they thought that I was just this snotty European designer who thought they knew best and wasn't taking any feedback. And they actually had like an intervention with me. It was kind of scary. Like, the whole team took me into a room and sat me down, and they were like, "We need to talk about this design." Like, I felt like I insulted them and their country, and I was like, no, you guys, like, you don't understand. Like, I didn't know you were giving any of this feedback, etc. And so they quickly backed off, realized that I had the best intentions, and from that point, we actually completely opened up communication channels, and they were continuously involved in the design from there. So this was great. That really started a process of complete collaboration with the local team, but we still had to go through user testing. So we had a bit of an idea of what they were going to say, but we gathered more learnings there as well. So as a reminder, this is what we showed the user. So the app is completely minimalist. It is the quickest book process possible. There were no extra images, no animations, a really subdued color palette. You had the ability to just, when you searched for a hotel, you could click book at that moment, and then you would go through the book process, put your name and phone number, and then it was booked. And that was that. And we didn't give any extra information about the hotel or anything like that. So now let's talk about what the user expected to see. So in the market, there's actually a few design patterns that you can see here. So there's really bright, fun colors. Only one of these is a GIF, but there's a lot of animations on the site. There's this really interesting UI that is this mashup of real photos and sketched photos, and it's all much different to what I was used to. And also, there's a heavy focus on deals and promotions. And all of the apps there are actually super apps where you can book a lot of things in one app. So during the user testing, the difference between what they're used to using all the time and what we showed them was so great that they actually thought we were complete fraud. Like, people didn't even want to put in their details when they went through the book process, because fraud is a really big problem in Indonesia, actually. So they were like, yeah, we don't trust this. Like, this is not, no. Like, and then another user was like, wait, is my hotel actually booked? Like, he wanted to call the hotel to make sure that he actually had a room for that night, because he just didn't trust it at all. So at this point, it was back to the drawing board. So we flew back to Amsterdam with all of these learnings, and it was really time to change things up here. So it was time to completely collaborate with the locals and immerse ourselves in the culture. So from here, we worked with the local team completely. We had collaborative mood boards, we did a complete redesign, we did a lot of analysis of popular brands and what is expected in the market at that point. And then also, we invested a lot more in research. We trained the team there, like the marketing operations team, in like quick and dirty user testing methods, so that whenever we had a new design, et cetera, they could easily go take it to their friends, take it to the mall, whatever, and just gather some really quick insights before we invested time in building anything. So within the next few weeks, we were like, okay, we clearly can't release what we released before, because it can hurt our brand image if everyone thinks we're fraud. So we quickly threw together, you'll see my first attempt at understanding Southeast Asian UI, having never been exposed to it before. And our new hypothesis was that bookers require a longer book process and trust messaging in order to be seen as a trustworthy and valid product. And at this point, we implemented the rebrand, we added a hotel page with hotel details, a 3-step book process, trust messaging. We placed a lot more emphasis on deals, for example. And this was just a Band-Aid. We knew we had a lot more work to do. So at the end of phase 1, there are 3 learnings that I took away. First, make sure you go to the country that you're designing for to truly understand your users. Second, start gathering customer feedback as early as possible in the product. Business might push you and be like, no, we need to get this done as fast as possible. Make sure you push back. And lastly, make sure you collaborate with the experts in the market, because good design is really not the same thing everywhere in the world. So here is where we enter phase 2 of the product. So at this point, design thinking played a really critical role in the decisions that we made moving forward. Design really became a forefront of the strategy for the product from here on out. And for anyone who just needs a quick reminder, I'll take you through the design thinking process. So design thinking is a mindset that helps keep the user at the center of everything that you do. So you start with empathizing with your users, going through research, understanding the jobs they need to get done, their pains, their gains, and then you define the problem that you want to solve. From there, you come up with some ideas, brainstorming, then you narrow it down, prototype the ideas that you want to validate, and test those. And then the cycle continues again and again, and when you have enough validated insights, you can then build on those insights and release the product, then you gather even more learnings and continually iterate on your product. So one really easy way to apply design thinking is to do it in a sprint or a design workshop. So we actually took the Google Design Sprint method and we shortened it into the first 2 phases of design thinking and created a 2-day design workshop. So we started by empathizing with our users and defining the problems. So we looked at a snapshot of the market, we went over our user persona, we understood the user needs, and we also analyzed popular apps and really what needs were they fulfilling and what gaps there were. Next, we went through a bunch of brainstorming exercises, we sketched ideas, we did some prototypes and wireframes. So here's just a quick example of some of the sketches that we did. And we came out with this set of wireframes that was the best combination of everyone's ideas and the ideas that we knew that we wanted to test. So in the next couple of weeks following the design workshop, I put together a working prototype, and we arranged another user testing session with an agency in Jakarta, bought our tickets, and we were ready to go and test this next version. So let me just start by saying, like, when we left the design workshop, we were like, we are gonna break the market, guys. Like, this is the best idea ever. Like, so basically, so in Indonesia, Instagram is the #1 used app. Like, they're obsessed with Instagram. If you're an Instagram influencer, that is like the highest celebrity status that you can possibly get. Like, it's huge every day. And the team there even coached me on my Instagram because they stalked me on Instagram beforehand and knew everything that I did wrong on my Instagram. So we were like, this is gonna be so great. Complete Instagram integration with our booking site. We are gonna have Instagram influencer testimonials. We're gonna show which hotels are the most Instagrammable. We're gonna have emojis for ratings. Like, this is gonna be awesome. So this is, of course, where the next reality check came in. And all of that Instagram integration that we were super excited about, yeah, they didn't want any of it. They were like, why would we mix our social lives with, like, booking hotels? That doesn't make any sense. And they said that they wouldn't trust Instagram influencers' testimonials because obviously they were paid to say those nice things. And we were like, I mean, fair point. Makes sense. But what was the most surprising was that the hypotheses that were validated were basically all of the things that the users already expected to see, but like slightly improved versions of it. So like we made a more advanced map search, for example, or being able to see multiple hotel photos on search results. Like, these were really small things that were totally validated. Like, we could take it back and we could do it. Everyone like had a good response to it. But we were just so shocked because they weren't particularly innovative at all. So at end of phase 2, there are 3 kind of lessons here. So first, design sprints obviously are not a magical process that will get it right the first time. Design sprints are a great way to come up with and test ideas quickly to gather learnings. And 3, you can never know enough about your user. So this is where we enter phase 3 of the product and where we are today. So we took everything that we validated and invalidated and brought it back to Amsterdam and continued to iterate. So we ended up creating the next version of the design with everything that we had validated, created a minimum viable product of each of these things, so then we could take them back to Indonesia and test the live versions that were developed and continuously iterate and validate even further. So after all of those iterations over the course of 8 months, this is what our app looks like now. It's live. It gets bookings every day. Not a lot, but still gets bookings every day. And we learned that we had to kind of fulfill, honestly, the basic needs and expectations in the market before we even came up with anything innovative. And we had to kind of start to gain trust with the users there by giving them what they expected to see. So now we are actually still covering the basics. We're doing hygiene features, but we're trying to do them in a smarter way so that we can improve the user experience from the other travel companies. And while the basics are being built, we're investing heavily in user research. So we have a user researcher there now. We're funded, and we are going to continue to use design thinking to strategize and really differentiate ourselves in the market. So in conclusion, I have 3 points you should take away. 1 is design is subjective. There is definitely not a universal design standard, and what is visually appealing to one market is definitely not to another. 2, humility is key. Approach any new market knowing that you know nothing, even if it's similar to your market, and make sure you visit whatever country you're working on and truly understand the cultural behaviors and expectations before even jumping into design. And lastly, make sure that you fulfill the very basic needs and expectations and then jump into innovation. And I'm out of time, but if you want to talk at the end of the day, I'd love to answer any questions or discuss any of your experiences with emerging markets.